Tae sat in his office, his gaze fixed on the phone screen as he checked in with the investment team. Any response from Titan Group? His voice was calm, measured to measured. "Not yet, sir. We're following up," came the reply. A quiet sigh escaped him as he placed the phone down. His fingers strummed against the polished surface of his desk, a subtle but telling gesture. Sira noticed it immediately, the faint shift in his expression, the way his jaw tightened ever so slightly. The looming crisis with Nathaniel Corporation's declining shares weighed heavily on his mind. He was the CEO. Hesitation was a luxury he couldn't afford. The company's survival depended on swift, strategic action. "Sira," he said, his voice lower now, thoughtful, "set up meetings with key stakeholders immediately. I need a call with the board to outline corrective measures. Arrange a sit-down with our major investors. Let them know we have a solid strategy in place. Get me a meeting with the financial analysts. I want a full assessment of our position and viable adjustments." Understanding his urgency, she gave a swift nod and exited, leaving Tae alone in the quiet hum of his office. He leaned back against his chair, exhaling slowly. This weight, this responsibility, it was all too familiar. His father had walked the same path before him, drowning in obligations, consumed by expectations. What had truly kept that man away from his wife and son? Was it duty, or the unwavering grip of Reginald, the patriarch who dictated their lives? His fingers tightened slightly around the armrest. "I never wanted this," his voice barely above a whisper, an admission to no one but himself. "Not again." Tae stood by the window, his fingers mindlessly clicking the pen. The city stretched before him, but his thoughts scattered across business deals and responsibilities. The sudden creak of the door broke his trance. He turned, his breath catching for the briefest second before a smile lifted his lips. "Rue, you." Jungkook stood there, leaning against the doorframe, a lazy smirk tugging at his lips. He looked effortlessly perfect, black checkered cotton pants hugging his frame, a sleek black shirt hanging open at the front, teasing glimpses of his chest. Damn him, Tae felt the hitch in his pulse, the way the air shifted just from his presence. Tae's fingers curled around the pen, eyes locked on Jungkook. He took a slow step forward, his gaze drinking him in. Jungkook's lips pulled into a slow grin. "Missed me?" Tae shook his shoulder, feigning control when, in truth, the sight of Jungkook knocked him off balance in the best possible way. He leaned in ever so slightly, catching the trace of Jungkook's cologne, fresh, deep, utterly him. "Oh, frick Rue," he murmured, half to himself, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Behind Jungkook, Sira stood stiff in the doorway, clearly not expecting to stumble into this. Tae leaned back, catching Jungkook's wrist in a firm hold, pulling him inside without a second thought. He turned to Sira, smirking. "Sira, darling, do me a favor, no disturbances. I need this, make sure of it, yeah?" She bit back a smile, nodding. "Noted, sir." The second the door shut, she exhaled, giggling under her breath. How sweet, she thought, shaking her head before quickly composing herself, masking her fangirling before anyone caught her. Inside, Jungkook glanced around, then turned back to Tae. "You seemed lost in thought. What were you doing at the window?" Tae shrugged lightly, his eyes never leaving Jungkook. Jungkook took another step forward, voice dropping a fraction. "Tired, Tae?" A barely there nod. Jungkook's expression softened as he took Tae's hand, warmth curling between their palms. Without a word, he guided him toward the couch, sitting first before tugging Tae down beside him, seamlessly folding them into closeness. Minutes passed, Tae lying against Jungkook's chest, his lashes fluttering, his breathing evening out as Jungkook ran gentle fingers through his hair, their legs tangled in easy intimacy, Tae's arm draped under Jungkook's while Jungkook held him firmly against his chest, keeping him right where he belonged. Jungkook smiled suddenly, the kind of smile that came with an unspoken thought. Tae noticed. "What?" Jungkook let out a quiet chuckle, his fingers ghosting over Tae's back. "I wish I could take you to Seoul." Tae lifted a brow, his exhaustion edged with amusement. And get shot by Mr. Jeon? Jungkook scoffed, shaking his head. I'm serious, he exhaled, wistful. I want to walk with you under the cherry blossoms, just us, the pink magic surrounding us. Tae leaned away slightly, searching Jungkook's face. So let's go, you want to, don't you? Jungkook's smile faltered, his thumb grazing over Tae's wrist as he sighed. Tae, we can't, right? Tae exhaled, pressing closer, resting his face against Jungkook's chest, lips brushing faintly over the warmth of his skin. I'll take you to Lura Village, Tae murmured, where we can experience that dreamy pink atmosphere together. It may not be Seoul, but it'll be ours. Jungkook's eyes softened, fingers tracing lazy circles into Tae's back. When will you take me, Taehyung Nathaniel? Tae smirked, his fingers traveling lower, slow and teasing, tracing the checkered fabric along Jungkook's thigh. He watched the way Jungkook's breath hitched slightly, the way his muscles tensed beneath his touch. Wait for it to blossom, Jeon Jungkook. Jungkook giggled, shaking his head before pulling Tae impossibly closer, their world narrowing into something that belonged only to them. Hours had passed in quiet stillness. Taehyung lay nestled against Jungkook's chest, his breath slow, steady, completely at peace. The rhythm of Jungkook's fingers in his hair had lulled him into sleep, something soft and unintentional, but so undeniably needed. Jungkook didn't move, his body had long since gone numb from holding Tae, yet he didn't mind. He simply leaned his head back, watching the city outside as the golden hues of sunset spilled across the glass. His gaze drifted down, Taehyung, so effortlessly beautiful, the soft rise and fall of his chest, the way his lashes fluttered faintly, the gentle parting of his lips as he slept. Jungkook swallowed. This moment, this stillness, he wanted to stay in it forever. The sudden vibration of Taehyung's phone snapped him from his trance. He reached over carefully, answering without hesitation. You can go, Sierra. A brief pause, then a quiet chuckle from the other end. All right, sir. Enjoy your evening. The call ended. Jungkook exhaled, glancing down at Taehyung once more, still fast asleep. He smiled to himself, shifting slightly but never enough to wake him. Instead, he simply held him closer, his fingers absent-mindedly trailing along Taehyung's back. Much later, Tae stirred, a soft inhale, a slow stretch, his brows furrowing slightly as his senses adjusted to the dim glow of the office. The lights had flickered on automatically, the sky outside now painted in deep blues and scattered city lights. What time is it? Tae mumbled, his voice raspy with sleep as he blinked at Jungkook. Jungkook lifted his head slightly, his smile warm, easy. You took a nap. Taehyung groaned, sitting up, running a hand through his hair before leaning back against the couch. Jungkook followed suit, watching him closely. Why did you let me sleep? Tae asked, voice softer now, laced with exhaustion. Jungkook reached out, brushing a thumb against Tae's cheek, his fingers gliding gently along his jaw. Because you needed it, he murmured. Taehyung stilled under his touch, his gaze dropping to Jungkook's lips just as Jungkook leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against his own. Tae sighed into it, returning the kiss, slow, unhurried, like the entire world had narrowed down to this one fleeting moment. And then, just as suddenly, a thought struck him. Tae pulled back slightly, eyes wide. Jungkook chuckled, nodding. She's gone. Relief flickered across Taehyung's face, followed by amusement. You handled that well, he murmured. Jungkook smirked, fingers tracing lightly over the fabric of Tae's sleeve. I handle you well. Taehyung rolled his eyes, biting back a smile. Debatable. Jungkook only laughed, pulling Tae back against him, their warmth folding into each other once more. Taehyung's hand glided down the perfect curve of Jungkook, lingering on the softness of his round bottom. In a swift motion, Jungkook pushed Tae back against the couch, settling himself onto his thighs. He leaned in closer, their breaths mingling, and whispered, Hyunji. Tae's senses blurred, a rush of warmth flooding through him as he mumbled, Babe. Jungkook captured Tae's lips in a fervent kiss, igniting a fire between them. Tae's hands instinctively found their way to Jungkook's backside, kneading the supple flesh with a mix of desire and affection. Jungkook smirked, a playful glint in his eyes, as he deftly pulled Tae's hands away from his body and secured them gently. With a teasing arch of his brow, Tae smiled, anticipation dancing in his gaze. Jungkook leaned in closer, murmuring, "I'll ride you." As the inches sank deeper into Jungkook, he pressed firmly against Tae, whose eyes fluttered closed, surrendering to the enveloping warmth of his partner. Jungkook's hand found its way to Tae's neck, fingers gently clenching as he moved with an irresistible rhythm. Tae's hand curled around Jungkook's hip, guiding him with a soft yet deliberate motion, urging him to rise and fall in perfect harmony. Tae gasped, breathless, "Harder, Rue, I want to feel all of you." Jungkook leaned closer, his breath warm against Tae's ear, whispering, "You feel so good, Tae. I never want this to end." Tae gasped softly, adding, "Yes, baby, just like that." With each thrust and gentle caress, their connection deepened. Jungkook's pace quickened as he heard Tae's encouragement, and he murmured, "Tell me what you want." "Harder," Tae breathed, his voice laced with urgency. "I need you to take me completely." With each thrust, Jungkook murmured, "Tae, fill me, just like that." Tae's voice was thick with desire as he urged him on. "Faster, Jungkook. I want to feel you completely. Don't hold back, give it to me." With each word, the intensity between them heightened, driving Jungkook to quicken his pace, lost in the rhythm of their passion. Morning light spilled gently into the room, casting soft golden streaks over rumpled sheets. Jungkook stirred, eyes barely cracking open, his body reluctant to leave the lingering warmth of last night's closeness. His hand reached out instinctively, searching for Tae's warmth only to find empty space. A sleepy frown formed as he blindly patted the sheets, his voice groggy. "Tae?" From across the room, Taehyung was already half-dressed, phone pressed to his ear as he adjusted his cufflinks. He glanced over at Jungkook, a knowing smile curling at his lips as he walked over, leaning down. His lips brushed softly against Jungkook's forehead. Jungkook hummed in response, eyes still half-lidded, savoring the fleeting warmth. The call ended, and Tae ran a hand through his hair, glancing at Jungkook with amusement. "Rest a little more, you look exhausted." Jungkook let out a quiet breath, his cheeks tinged pink, though he didn't protest. Tae chuckled, crouching slightly as he wrapped his arms around Jungkook once more, holding him close just for a moment longer. "Sleep, I'll see you later." Jungkook sighed against him before letting Tae go, watching as he grabbed his blazer and left for the day. Time passed, the morning stretched into soft, slow hours. Jungkook finally stirred fully awake, the lazy remnants of sleep fading as he stepped into the shower, the warmth loosening his muscles. Once stressed, he wandered into the kitchen, cooking something simple, taking his time. His phone buzzed beside him, screen flashing a notification. Wedding preparations. He still needed to finalize the details. Just as he scrolled through his notes, his phone vibrated again. An incoming call. His brows furrowed. Nathaniel Mansion. His fingers hovered before he finally picked up. Reginald wanted to see him. Nathaniel Mansion study. Jungkook stepped into the dim-lit study. The scent of rich leather and aged books lingered in the air, blending with the sharp silence that followed his entrance. Reginald Nathaniel sat behind an imposing desk, his suit neatly pressed, his posture stiff with authority. The moment his cold gaze landed on Jungkook, the tension in the room thickened. "Sit." Jungkook swallowed, lowering himself into the chair, his confusion evident. Reginald didn't waste time. "I heard that my grandson refused to step out of his office yesterday." His voice was dangerously calm, each word cutting, "and I know exactly why." Jungkook kept silent. Reginald stood slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. Jungkook instinctively followed, rising to meet the looming figure of the man who controlled far too much. "I have given you my consent to marry Taehyung to be part of his life, but let me make one thing clear. He stepped forward, his presence heavy, authoritative. Nothing should distract Taehyung from Nathaniel Corporation. His role as CEO is absolute, and I will not tolerate anything that compromises his focus. Jungkook's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Reginald's voice lowered, deliberate. If you fail to respect this boundary, if you continue interfering in matters beyond your place, then both of you will face the consequences. The air thickened. If Taehyung loses sight of his responsibilities because of you, he will lose his position in this company, and I will ensure that happens. Jungkook's breath hitched, his pulse drumming against his ears. Reginald straightened, his expression unreadable. I like you, Jungkook, but if you refuse to draw a line between yourself and Tae's responsibilities as CEO, then I will be forced to take actions that ensure he moves on from you. Jungkook's breath hitched. Reginald's voice lowered, dangerously steady. Do not make me take such steps, Jungkook. You are dear to me. I hope that's clear. For a moment, Jungkook felt his head spin, his thoughts colliding violently against each other. His pulse drummed against his ears as his hands curled into fists at his sides. Without a word, he turned and walked out, his steps sharp against the pristine marble floors. Outside Nathaniel Mansion, the crisp air did little to soothe the burning behind Jungkook's ribs. His jaw tightened as he reached his car, yanking open the door with more force than necessary. You should have been careful. Jungkook turned sharply. Alex stood there, arms crossed, expression masked. The Nathaniels are dangerous, Jungkook, Alex said plainly. They don't play games, you should know that by now. Jungkook scoffed, shoving his keys into the ignition. I don't need warnings. You do. Jungkook didn't stay to argue. The car roared to life, tires screeching against the pavement as he sped down the mansion's driveway, his grip iron tight against the wheel. His chest heaved, breaths shallow. The words kept replaying, move on from you. The thought alone struck something raw. His foot pressed harder against the pedal, the city lights blurring past, the distant honking swallowed by the storm raging inside him. Too fast. His reckless speed tore through the streets, breaking signals, swerving too close to the edge of control. And then sirens, flashing lights. He didn't stop. A sharp turn, tires screeching, until, blocked. The flashing red and blue filled his vision as he came to an abrupt stop, hands gripping the wheel, breaths uneven. The officers approached, knocking against the glass. His fingers twitched, his chest tightened. Damn it! He barely registered the questions as he was pulled from the car, the cold handcuffs snapping against his wrists. Helplessness hit hard. He wasn't supposed to let it get this far, and yet here he was. Nathaniel Corporation investors meeting. The atmosphere in the boardroom was razor sharp, tension threading through every exchange. Taehyung sat upright at the head of the table, his fingers resting against the armrest, his expression composed but tight. The discussion had taken a turn one he hadn't anticipated. I have concerns, a senior investor spoke, voice cool but biting. The company's performance is faltering in the market, and frankly, I believe our CEO's inexperience is playing a role in that. Tae's jaw clenched, but he didn't react. Another voice chimed in, sharper this time. Nathaniel Corporation has thrived on stability for decades. This transition placing someone so young in leadership comes at a price. Taehyung inhaled slowly, his grip tightening around his chair. He would not lose control, not here, not now. The same man turned slightly, addressing Reginald directly. You should train your grandson, Chairman Nathaniel, before the company pays for these mistakes. Silence. Taehyung's gaze snapped toward Reginald, searching for a response, for something, but his grandfather simply sat there, his lips curled into a faint, unreadable smile. Was this entertaining for him? Taehyung felt something burn under his skin. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor as he exited the boardroom. Behind him, Reginald finally turned to the investor who had dared speak against Tae, adjusting his cufflinks casually before speaking. Nathaniel Corporation is too vast to crumble under petty concerns, Reginald said smoothly, and even if it did, I am wealthy enough to handle my grandson's baby steps. The investor stiffened. Reginald leaned back, a confident glint in his eyes. He is a Nathaniel, and he will prove it soon. Taehyung stormed into his cabin, his pulse thudding against his ribs. Sira followed closely behind, worried but silent, watching him as he exhaled sharply, loosening his tie. The faint ping of his email pulled his attention. He stared at the subject line. Titan Motors, final partnership decision. His heart pounded as he clicked it open, scanning the contents. Titan Motors had chosen not to partner with Nathaniel Corporation. His breath stilled. They had opted for a different business alliance. His fingers curled tightly into fists. This was for Jungkook, for them, and he had already failed. Tae closed his eyes briefly, the anger simmering deep, uncontrollable. Sira hesitated before stepping back, leaving him alone, sensing the storm inside him. The next vibration of his phone shattered his thoughts. He answered. Mr. Taehyung Nathaniel? Yes, he muttered, his voice low. This is Officer Ryanair from the Sydney Police Department. We need you at the station. It's regarding Jeon Jungkook. Taehyung stilled. The words barely registered. What happened? His voice was clipped, urgent. He was brought in due to reckless driving and violating multiple traffic regulations. Taehyung's grip on his phone tightened as his free hand reached for his keys. I'm on my way, he said, already dialing their lawyer as he strode out, Sira following closely. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered slightly, casting a dull glow over the waiting area. Taehyung sat stiffly, fingers tapping against his knee, his patience thinning with every passing second. The lawyer had already handled the formalities, the paperwork, the fines, the explanations. Now, all Tae had to do was wait. Until finally, Jungkook stepped out from behind the heavy metal doors, his posture tense. The officer beside him continued his unnecessary performance, words laced with condescension. Outsiders need to be more careful in Sydney. One wrong move, and it's a legal nightmare. Tae didn't give him the satisfaction of a reply. Instead, his hand wrapped firmly around Jungkook's wrist, guiding him past the officer without so much as a word, but the look he shot him, cold, sharp, piercing, was enough to silence the man mid-sentence. Jungkook didn't protest. He followed, steps slow, heavy with exhaustion, his emotions locked behind a wall of silence. Outside, Tae opened the car door, and Jungkook slid in wordlessly. Tae turned, briefly nodding to the lawyer. Thanks. The lawyer simply inclined his head. Get him home. Tae sank into the driver's seat, fingers strumming against the steering wheel, the weight of frustration pressing down on his chest, neither of them speaking. Until finally, you owe me an explanation, Rue, Tae said, voice controlled but sharp. Jungkook remained silent. What could he possibly say? That your grandfather threatened me, that if I step out of line, he'll make sure you lose everything. No, because if Tae knew, he'd fight, he'd throw away everything, burn bridges, turn back to recklessness, casinos, a life he barely clawed his way out of. Jungkook couldn't afford to let that happen. He swallowed down the chaos in his head, his fingers curling into fists. Tae exhaled sharply, slamming the accelerator, the car speeding through the dim-lit streets, tension crackling between them. The second Tae pulled up, Jungkook threw open the door, stepping out briskly, anger burning beneath his skin. Rue! Jungkook strode toward the house, his steps quick, unrelenting, until he reached his room and shut the door behind him. Taehyung followed, reaching just a second too late. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, standing outside the closed door. A pause, then a quiet knock. Rue, can we talk? Tae's voice was softer now, controlled. Silence. Nothing. Tae's patience snapped. Without another word, he stepped back, turning sharply, walking straight out of the house, his frustration swallowing him whole. Taehyung stepped into the house later that night, expecting words, anything from Jungkook. But Jungkook said nothing. He sat on the edge of the bed, gaze flickering briefly toward Tae before settling elsewhere. Tae exhaled sharply, crossing his arms. Rue, I need to know, what happened back there? Jungkook's fingers tightened around his phone, his chest constricting. He couldn't tell him. He wouldn't. So instead he lied. It's about Dad. Taehyung stilled, watching him carefully. That made sense. Jungkook had always grown tense at the mention of his father. Tae had seen it before, had felt the quiet distress Jungkook carried whenever Jeon was involved. Tae sighed. Did you fight again? Jungkook swallowed, his pulse hammering beneath his skin. Tae, just, don't ask me more. His voice cracked slightly, strained. Let me be alone for a while. Something pierced through Tae's chest at those words. His gaze lingered on Jungkook's face for a beat, searching aching before he grabbed his car keys and stepped out. It had been months since Taehyung last set foot here. Once, this place had been his world, a sanctuary of bright lights, unfiltered laughter, and high-stakes games where reality melted away. But tonight it felt different. The second he walked in, voices roared around him. Taehyung, Nathaniel, you're back? Damn, where have you been? Ryan grinned, tossing an arm around his shoulders. Look what the wind dragged in. Tae smirked faintly, taking a seat beside the table where blackjack was being played. The cards shuffled effortlessly. But something was off. Once, the rush of gambling had thrilled him, the scent of whiskey, the low hum of conversations, the pull of risk, it had all fueled him. Now, it felt loud, too suffocating. He stared at the cards in front of him but didn't reach for them, didn't feel anything. Slowly, he rose to his feet. Ryan frowned, watching him. You leaving already? Taehyung inhaled deeply, shaking his head. Yeah. Ryan studied him carefully. You alright? Tae didn't answer. He just stepped out. The city stretched around him, neon signs flickering, streets dim and quiet. And he spotted her. Sierra. He pulled over, rolling down the window. Sierra. She turned, adjusting her jacket. Sir, what are you doing out this late? Sierra sighed. Leaving a party, my friend's birthday. Tae nodded briefly. Get in, I'll drop you. She hesitated only for a second before slipping into the passenger seat. The drive was silent, calm, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the faint murmur of city traffic. Sierra stole glances at Tae, sensing the weight in his silence. Something was wrong. Once parked in front of her apartment, Tae turned off the engine. She hesitated before speaking. Sir, would you like to come in? Taehyung looked at her, his expression unreadable. I think you need someone, she murmured. You can talk to me, sir. Tae exhaled, rubbing his thumb against the steering wheel. Then he stepped out. She led him into her small apartment, setting her bag down, moving swiftly to prepare something. Tae barely looked around. Instead, he sank onto the couch, elbows resting on his knees, fingers pressing against his temples. Sierra returned moments later, handing him a fresh lemon drink, watching him carefully. Sir, Taehyung slowly lifted his gaze, taking a slow sip of the lemon drink, the tang hitting his throat, grounding him for a fleeting moment. He leaned back against the couch, exhaling, his body sinking into the cushions, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Sierra stood quietly, watching him, watching the man who, despite the sharpness in his presence, carried a weight only few could bear. Her gaze wandered, tracing the luxury that adorned him from the tailored fabric of his shirt, the watch resting against his wrist, the quiet elegance in the way he sat, yet slumped. And then his face, sharp, defined, too handsome, like something touched by the divine, sculpted by quiet suffering. Tae opened his eyes, locking onto hers. Should I leave? His voice was lower now, quiet. Sierra hesitated. Then she shook her head. Don't. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, then glanced around. Do you have something to eat? Sierra nodded quickly. I'll make something fast. Tae shook his head. Don't bother. But she was already on her feet. And Tae didn't stop her. She moved swiftly, preparing something simple, setting it before him as he sat up, elbows resting against his knees. If it's about company matters, sir, she murmured, watching him pick at the food. It's just time being. He stilled slightly, then continued eating. You should have been with Jungkook, she added after a pause. Tae exhaled sharply, shaking his head before reaching for the glass. The alcohol burned. He gulped all of it. Sir, Sierra hesitated. I don't want you to drive now. Tay pushed himself up, slightly off balance, his gaze unfocused for a fraction of a second before he steadied himself. I'm not going anywhere, he muttered. You'll have to stand me for a few more hours. He moved back to the couch, sprawling across it, eyes shutting. A slow breath. Thanks for the food, Sierra. Then he fell silent. Sierra lingered for a moment before stepping into her room, changing into something more comfortable. When she returned, Taehyung hadn't moved. She sighed, pressing her fingers against her temple before heading back to bed, pulling the blanket over her, the dim lights casting shadows against the walls. Taehyung stirred, a sharp inhale cutting through the silence. The remnants of a dream or a thought too loud to ignore clung to him. And then he called out, Jungkook. The name hung in the air, fading into the quiet. His eyes blinked open, the room unfamiliar for a second before reality settled back in. Sierra's apartment. He pushed himself up, running a hand down his face before stepping toward her bedroom. The door creaked slightly as he opened it. She lay curled in her blanket, her breathing steady, completely still. Tae exhaled, pressing the door shut quietly before picking up his mobile and keys. Tae's steps were sluggish, the lingering haze of alcohol and exhaustion weighing him down, yet he knew exactly where he was going, back to the house, back to Jungkook. As he drove, his grip tightened around the steering wheel, the clock read AM, the road quieter now, and with each mile that passed, memories of Jungkook flooded his mind. He reclined further into those moments, the way Jungkook's lips curved into a smile, the little mole on his neck that drove Tae wild, the sound of his giggle echoing in his ears, the memory of Jungkook's confident walk, his physique that made Tae's heart race. It all consumed him. Damn it, Rue, he murmured to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. You've spoiled me, you know that, every night. It's like I can't get enough. The song playing softly in the background only fueled his desire. It was one of their favorites, a melody that wrapped around him like a warm embrace. He licked his lips, feeling a familiar heat pooling in his stomach as his thoughts spiraled deeper into fantasies of Jungkook. Come on, Taehyung Nathaniel, calm down, he chided himself, glancing down. Not now. Get it together, buddy. He told us to leave him alone. By the time he pulled into the driveway, his pulse had steadied, but the longing hadn't faded. Tae stepped into the house, moving through the quiet halls toward their bedroom. And there he was, Jungkook deep in sleep, curled into the sheets, completely untouched by the storm raging inside Tae. Taehyung lingered by the door, watching him for long minutes, his fingers twitching at his side, torn between the urge to wake him and the need to let him rest. I want you so bad right now, he thought, biting his lip, the craving almost unbearable, but he controlled himself, moving quietly to the next bedroom, the bathroom. Turning the water on, he tried to drown out the throbbing desire. Rue, I'm sorry, babe, he whispered, the words tumbling from his lips. You've spoiled your Tainy, I can barely hold back. With trembling hands, he undid his pants, his manhood springing free. He held it gently, closing his eyes as Jungkook's image filled his mind, his soft moans, the way he looked at Tae with those deep, soulful eyes. Oh, Rue, FCACU, babe, Tae gasped, lost in the moment. As he reached his high, his grip on the sink tightened, his body shuddering against the cold wall. He leaned into it, breathing heavily, the intensity of his release washing over him. God, Jungkook, I need you, he breathed, the words a desperate plea, echoing in the stillness of the night. He quickly cleaned himself up, the remnants of desire still tingling in his veins. He changed into a fresh shirt, trying to shake off the haze of what just happened. As he stepped out of the bathroom, he couldn't help but mumble to himself, I can't leave you alone more than this, touching myself while wanting to do you. What kind of Tainy does that? He chuckled softly, shaking his head at his own antics. With all worries momentarily pushed aside, He made his way to Jungkook's bedroom, climbing into bed beside him, and Jungkook sent God his scent. Tae groaned softly, letting it drown him, his body reacting before his mind could. The bed felt like home, and he couldn't resist the pull of being close to the man he craved so desperately. And then Jungkook stirred, his lashes fluttered, breath slow but shifting as awareness crept in. "Tae," his voice was sleep-warmed, pulling Tae in without effort. Then his gaze flickered open, soft yet intent. "Where have you been?" Tae tensed, the question catching him off guard, but he forced himself to answer smoothly. "Casino." Jungkook blinked, processing before murmuring, "I'm sorry." Tae frowned slightly, watching him. "For what?" "For asking you to leave me alone." And then Jungkook moved. Too close, too slow, too knowing. Tae noticed how Jungkook inched closer, his legs crawling up Tae's body. Damn, Tae's breath hitched. He knew his Rue wanted him now, and he had already spent everything earlier, leaving nothing but the wreckage of what had once been urgent, insatiable want. But Jungkook didn't know that, and now he was suspicious. "Tae," Jungkook murmured, closing the distance between them and kissing him softly. "Rue, I'm sleepy," he blurted, too fast, his voice a fraction unsteady, betraying him immediately. Jungkook stilled, not withdrawing, not pushing forward, just watching him too closely. "You're saying you're not interested?" Tae rushed, scrambling for damage control, words tumbling out in uneven waves. No, babe. It's just okay, just give me some time." Jungkook pulled back slightly, tilting his head, eyes scanning Tae's face, slow and deliberate, like he was piecing something together, like he was starting to wonder. And Tae, he felt the moment shift. He was so unbelievably doomed.